Hello, in this skills video we are going to do a quick introduction to variables, and we're going to talk about some essential vocabulary in here, and just to kind of get our understanding started. We're going to use Python, but the ideas here translate to a variety of languages. So let's just really quickly make sure we understand what a variable is. I have this picture here I've drawn, and if I have some code where I say x equals 4, what does that do? Well, it creates a variable called x, so that's space in memory, where it actually stores in that space the value 4. This is what we call a primitive type because the value is stored right inside the memory location. Another type of variable you're going to come across as an early programmer are called lists. So if I say list1 and I say list1 has 1, 2, and 3, so it has 3 elements, we say, this is a reference variable. So again, it makes space in memory to store that value, but what gets stored in there isn't the actual value, it stores a reference to where it is. So imagine you go to that variable location to get that information, but you just get pointed somewhere else. The idea of primitive and reference variables are a little more advanced, but I like to introduce those words right away just to get you comfortable with them, because you'll start to see some interesting behaviors when you're programming, which is a result of these two broad classifications. So let's just go back and look at some code here. So simplified concept is a variable is like a box with a name where something is stored. Programming languages have to know what's inside the box, and that's referred to as type. And we'll see some examples down below. Declaring a variable, or declaration, is the first time a programming language comes across a variable. And what it needs to do is allocate some space in memory, and that is going to be driven based on the type of variable that is being stored. Initialization is the very first time that we place a value in that box. So we make a box to store some information, and then we're going to initialize it to something. We're going to give it some value. You're going to hear the term assignment statement quite a bit. An assignment statement is simply a line of code with an equal sign. The left-hand side will be the variable name, so the variable that we're going to store that information in, and the right-hand side is the information that is actually being stored. It's important to always look at the right-hand side first and evaluate it before you then look at the left-hand side, because what happens is we evaluate the right-hand side and take the result and put it into the variable location. And again, I talked about these broader classifications of primitive and reference types. I just want those words to kind of be out there so you start to think about them. They do have some impacts later on and some techniques we use. So let's talk about 5 types of variables you're going to come across early in your programming, specifically in Python. The first are called strings. Strings act like primitive types. They're not truly primitive types, but we can imagine they are. And they are any collection of characters. So this variable is called this variable is called name, and I put the value Paul inside of it. Here's an example where I have an entire sentence, and I place it inside the variable sentence. I can put numbers inside the quotes, and then so number 1 gets the value 3. Now, be aware, this is 3 as a string. It is not 3 as a number. So if you try and do mathematics with it, the computer will get confused. You can look at that and recognize it's a number, and you can treat it as a number or a word. Computers can't do that. It has to know the type that it's being stored as, and depending on the type will impact what you can do with it. So here I have 3.0, again stored as a string in the variable number 2. The second type of variable you're going to come across are called integers. These are what are called 32-bit variable types, meaning it allocates 32 bits of memory, and it is a primitive type. So here I have num1, and I'm storing the value 3 in it. Here I have num2, and I'm storing the value -9 in it. And here I have num3, and I'm storing the value 3 plus 4. So this is an example where I have an assignment statement, and I first have to look at the right-hand side, evaluate that to get 7, and then I place that 7 into num3. So if we want to store real numbers or numbers with decimals, I can use floats. Sometimes you'll see people use doubles. They are the same type of variable in terms of what they store. They just have different memory allocation requirements. So floats use 32 bits, and they are a primitive type. So if I say fnum1, I can store 3.0 in it. Notice, you and I will look at 3.0, 3, and 3 in quotes, and really it doesn't matter. We understand that it is what it is. A computer will identify, or Python and other programming languages will distinguish between 3.0, 3, and 3.0 in quotes, or 3 in quotes. And here I have two more examples, where the third example, again, I'm going to evaluate the right-hand side, and what's unique here is I have an integer plus a float, and what Python will do is store that as a float. So this will store 7.0 into fnum3. The next type of variable we want to think about are called booleans. Again, booleans act like primitive types. And so I have flag1, and flag1 stores true, and flag2 stores false. Booleans can only be true or false. In Python, we spell true and false with capital T and capital F. The last type of variable that you're going to encounter are called, in your early programming, are called lists. Lists are actually collections of variables. So lists have a length and an index value. Index values for a list are 0 to the length minus 1. So here we have a variable called list1, and this is an empty list. It has a length of 0. Here we have list2, and I've collected 3 integers in there. So this list has a length of 3, and it has indexes 0 to 2. List3 stores 2 strings. It has a length of 2 with indexes 0 to 1. List4 has an integer and a string, so it has a length of 2, indexes 0, 1. Lists are useful because you can collect similar information inside of them, and that information doesn't all have to be the same type. So here I've just did a print to kind of illustrate that. If I want to access, say in list 2, this value 1, I'm going to write list 2 at 0. That's how we access the specific index value. There's a video a little later where we go into more detail with this, of course. And then if we want to get the length of a list, we just use the function len. So that's a really quick primer into your early variables you're going to run into as a programmer. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a great day.